Welcome to the Mystery of Assumption Absolute Manifestation from a non-dual perspective, state over stuff, living heaven on earth as a frequency of embodiment, because you are an individualized expression of God, of the all that is, hanging out in a meat suit with me, co-creating this moment. And I do thank you for it. Many street transmissions are brought to you by and are courtesy of the Electric Temple. I am your host and identity alchemist, self-sovereignty mentor, Lucien Francois. Mateo St. James is listening to. So I've been doing a few sermons here on the channel based on some of the music that's been most impactful to me, because I believe that the message of the reality of God being everything and everyone all the time is everywhere. And I'm very influenced by music. I have a history in radio and in DJing and different things. So, I can't even say enough about the divinity that I hear and feel in music, that is just inherent in it as an expression of art form. But all things are divine. If they come from divine origin, that means they're of divine origin. So I think it was, if I had to point, I did look it up before I got started. I think it was 1975, could have been 1976. I'll look it up. But Shakedown Street, it's the title track on the album of the same name by the Grateful Dead. And there's a lyric in there that says, "Maybe the dark is from your eyes." And so the song itself is really kind of referring to, Shakedown Street, which used to be a nice area, but, through time became a not so nice area, potentially even, if it's kind of framed as a dangerous area. So they're, talking about, Shakedown Street and this kind of tale of somebody who's kind of defending Shakedown Street and saying that, maybe the dark is from your eyes. You've got such dark eyes. So, but that resonated to me. I was like, oh, maybe the dark is from your eyes. Are you willing to take that type of responsibility in your world as an individualized expression of the all that is? The dark that you see is the dark in your eyes. Because reality creation comes about simply, if we're talking about it in a simple manner, in terms of who you say that you are. When you access the frequency of I am, you are tapping into the frequency of God. You are tapping into the creative cosmic power that is the origin of all things, and you're declaring that over your life. But it's not a matter of what you're saying, it's a matter of what you're certain of and a matter of what you're agreeing to, as well as what you're focused on. Because you can say, I am B all day, but if you're focused all day on C, and then you're feeling D, then it really doesn't matter what you're saying when you're saying I am B, because it's not about what you're saying. It's about what your state of self-understanding is aligned with. And your state of it, and that sounds like, when I first got into quote unquote self-concept work, I was like, oh God, I gotta fix my self-concept now. I've gotta, and all these books and all these courses. But no, what you say is true for yourself is true the moment that you state it, so long as you allow it to be in a state of certainty within. Because, for instance, working in the field of mental wellness for 7 years, when somebody has low self-esteem, they're certain of it. They're like, I'm a loser because this event and that event and childhood, and then my adolescence happened, and then I got dumped when I was 20, and then I lost my job, and then I was homeless for 3 years, and homeless, and during the time that I was homeless, then I got a job, and then that job fired me, and it's like I have this big long receipt. I'm certain I'm a loser. So on the opposite end of that, it's not necessarily that you need to build a script of evidence, because at the same time, if you're building a script of evidence, you're still depending on external events to tell you who you are. So it's not about that either. It's about erasing the need for external evidence altogether, because you are the external evidence. That external evidence is coming from whence? Through you. So there's nothing that's happening inside your world that is not happening. There's nothing happening that appears to be outside in the world that first didn't happen in here. But are you prepared to take that type of responsibility? Maybe the dark is from your eyes. Maybe the dark is from your eyes. Maybe the dark is from your eyes. Maybe the darkness that you're seeing is because you're living in a state of fear. You're living in a state where you're like, I'm not somebody who wins. I'm not somebody that has good luck. I'm not somebody that, has love. I'm not somebody who things work out for. Or maybe you're probably into all this work and you're probably affirming and you're scripting and you're trying as hard as you can because you don't really believe that it's possible, which again, like that's the state. You can say whatever you want, but you have to first state what the identity is and then align your certainty with it. And that certainty comes from within. That certainty comes from knowing that you are an individualized expression of the all that is, again, of the cosmic power that is the origin of all things. Nothing out there is going to prove it to you. So you remove that as a receipt altogether. You remove that as a consideration. Well, how do I know? And a lot of times when we, fall quote unquote out of state or out of certainty, it's because we begin to start looking. So, and it's not just about your thoughts, but then your thoughts can, if you start identifying with them, you can have a negative thought, but if you have a negative thought that says, I'm never going to get it, okay, you can dismiss that. I do a visualization, I hit it out of the ballpark. Okay. But if you start agreeing with that state, okay, when you're in a state, because everything's happening every single moment, manifestation being the creation space of the internal world, and materialization then being that internal world as a physical expression that appears to take time, but it really does take just persistent awareness. So maybe the dark is from your eyes. I mean, can you accept that? Because if you can accept that, you can have everything you want. I promise you can have everything you want. But if you're looking out there and you're like, no, the dark is due to this, and it's due to that, and it's due to person A, and it's due to the government, and it's due to my boss, and it's due to my girlfriend that left me in 3rd grade, and it's due to my parents because they told me to break up with her, and then I started treating her bad, and I'll never forget, Miss Sally Winters who did. And they're the dark. They're the source. It's like you're only even having those experiences again because you've got these shades on, these shades of experience. It doesn't mean the things that happen to you aren't valid. It doesn't mean that they didn't happen. It just means, like, do you want to continue agreeing with that darkness? Do you want to continue aligning with that as a state of certainty? Do you want to keep focusing on it? And do you want to keep attaching it to the after of your I am and stating that this is just inherent to my identity? Because the minute that you decide and the minute that you align with the certainty that I am the source, the origin, the individualized expression of God concerning my reality and the things that I experience, that's your certainty. And then you pay attention to the experience of those things and you give yourself the experience of those things. And that can be on an emotional basis, that can be on a thought basis, but the emotions and thoughts are not the creation space, but they are products of your expression as God. But sometimes they might be misaligned. Sometimes, you might experience, it's like, okay, if I had everything I wanted, I'd be happy all the time. It's like, maybe you wouldn't be. Can you allow that experience to pass through and observe it and not let it affect you and not let it change your state as a person you desire to be, as a person that experiences the things that you desire to have? It's not about stuff. It's about the experiences those things, that stuff, that person, that job, whatever it is, will give you. And you live that experience now. You live it so thoroughly that whether or not that stuff shows up or doesn't, it doesn't really matter. But again, that's not the focus. The focus is not like, well, if it doesn't show up, I'll just have to be okay. It's not that. It's not entertaining a reality where it's about not entertaining a reality where you didn't have those things, because that's not your truth. I talk about it as a multiple choice question. When you select a reality, when you select B, you're not selecting A, C, and D. So it's not about like, well, I'll just have to be okay with not having it, because like then you're selecting a reality where you don't have it and you've excommunicated yourself from the other versions of reality, the state that you do. So you choose, this is who I experience myself to be, regardless of the evidence I have. I focus on things that are in alignment with this assignment to myself. These are the types of things I pay attention to, and anything else is just noise. And if I happen to see something in the 3D that confirms it, I know that came from the origin of myself. And if I see things that seem to represent an old script or the darkness in my eyes, I leave that shit alone. I let it be. I don't do anything with it. We might have to behaviorally intervene and talk about that. We might have to do reasonable things at certain points in time, in order to keep a roof or whatever it is, but you don't align those things as the truth of your experience. They're fragmented experiences of a separated self that was operating from fear. And we don't agree with that anymore. That's not who I am. So who do you say that you are? And if you can take responsibility from the dark being from your eyes, then you have enough autonomy, choice, and intention to create the light, because you're not creating anything. Creation's finished, but to be the light. And what you are, you will always see. And that can change right here in a moment. You don't need to do intensive amounts. I don't know how many courses I took, thinking I'm like changing my self-concept, but all I was doing was reinforcing the fact that I needed to change, which just led to more negative experiences. So take the shortcut. Just decide it now. The evidence is you. You are the evidence. But because you thought it, or Neville Goddard talks about the fact that like the desire is the fulfillment. I mean, I've made this for another video, but I haven't found that video yet because I get all these messages from like different places, different signals. But the desire being, if you can be present with the desire, what does that look like internally in terms of state? Love unconditional, or I call it, unconditional allowance, like me letting all things be, letting all people be. You're not fighting with freaking Uncle Ted about who he voted for. Let him, he's a reflection of a particular reality. He can vote for who he wants to vote for. That's fine. That's fine. It doesn't matter. You stop being as affected by things because your preferences of a particular 3D reality are not driving your internal sense of self and emotional experience. Yes, we'll get triggered. Yes, we'll have, negative emotions that come up, but you're no longer controlled by them because they're not the state of your identity. And you understand that those things out there, they're not the origin point. Whereas like, if I have to have a conversation with somebody that aligns with my viewpoints and they don't align with my viewpoints, and then we ensue in an argument and in a conflict, and then they still don't align with my viewpoints, what am I saying? I'm saying that they're source. I'm saying I can't be happy unless they align, unless they make it right for me. It's knowing that you're an individualized expression of source consciousness, and for me, beauty is a virtue. Beauty, peace, calm, security, serenity, isness, just knowing, versus a lot of times when we get a desire, we get the idea of a desire, the human mind, the ego mind immediately is like, where is it? And then you hear all this stuff. It's just like, okay, well, I heard it's here now. Well, where is it? It's like, it's in you. And you're not going to see it until you align with that so fully. And when I find a line, that could seem, very difficult too, but until your attention is focused on being the person that is experiencing that reality so fully that reality is what manifests in front of you. Because I always say, nobody's teaching you to manifest. We're talking about attention. We're talking about agreements. We're talking about certainty. We're talking about identity. And different teachers have different ways of discussing these same themes. But we're not teaching you how to manifest. You are a manifestation. Your whole life is a manifestation. Nobody's teaching you to manifest. So immediately we go into separation. So fear, clinging, longing. Where is it? Illusion, addiction, being addicted. It can be addicting to not have what you want, because there is actually a great deal of emotional stimulation that comes from, checking or wondering, or the anxiety, the cortisol, the adrenaline. That can actually, like, to not have what you want, if you've not had what you wanted ever. I don't mean ever, but I mean, if you've had, a difficult life. I mean, most of us come into this space and things are not looking and feeling good. A lot of us, have been initiated into a spiritual understanding of an awakening. And I haven't met anybody where that, and fine, it could just be my reality, the dark in my eyes, but I've not met anybody that, like, it was all love and light. And then it was just more love and light, and life just kept getting better. And then because what spirituality, and we talk about spirituality, just like of the spirit, of the divine. What that calls us to do is to live within the spectrum of that individualized expression. That's what this human experience of incarnated separation is. So we have the pleasure, the privilege, the pain, the despair, the excitement, the enthusiasm, and the complete devastation of living the entire spectrum of all of those things, and that being just a very limited list, for Source to know more of itself, for God to experience more of God's self. I'm God, and you're God, and we're God looking at each other and co-creating this moment. So most of the time we get a desire, we immediately go into separation, which is just an expression of fear. So when you realize there's nothing to fear because the dark is from my eyes, then that sense of separation, you realize I was never separate. This is not about like I have to release the idea of separation. You were never separate from any of it. It's releasing the idea that you ever were. That was never happening. It's all connected to you. which means that if you can consciously attune your attention, your focus, your agreements, and your state of I am, who you say that you are, to represent the type of lifestyle that you would actually design for yourself consciously, as a representation of that desire, as an expression of that desire, rather than as a fear of not having it. Well, you can have anything you want. You probably can't fly. You probably can't fly. But I don't know. As I'm saying, I don't know. I don't know how this works. I know what I know. I know the fragments of information we've collected from ancient teachings, and even a smaller fragment of that. I wouldn't say no. I would say I know nothing. Say I know nothing. But I have, ideas of concepts that I shared here with you. So I thank you for tuning in to my ideas and concepts here at the Ministry of Assumption. Absolute manifestation from a non-dual perspective, self as divinity, state over stuff. I'm your host, Lucienne St. James. And until next time, remember to be good to yourselves and others, because everybody's just a version of you anyway.